Alright, what up, guys? This is DJ Talks again. We're going to be talking today about Yahoo Esports and how they recently announced a cancellation. My name is Johnny, somewhere either to my left or right. I don't remember which one it is. Which side are you compared to me?
I'm on your right, I think.
Alright, on my right is my boy Dan. Say hi.
Yeah. Hi, I remember Dan. You all can remember me.
Don't forget him because he's
Don't
gonna be
forget
upset
me.
about that.
Don't forget me. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, we wanted to talk a little bit about what happened with the Yahoo Esports announcement, how they got canceled, and then we wanted to do a bit of an analysis and talking about esports content in general, specifically with League of Legends, because that's what Yahoo Esports did a lot of their content on, and then kind of studying the different types of content that Yahoo was doing, what others were doing that were kind of competing in the same market,
Mhm.
and then why we think they ultimately failed and we're probably going to fail if not then when. It was just a matter of time.
Pretty much
um,
why Yahoo Esports. I mean, why other content is more popular than thing that Yahoo Esports did. So, or why they succeed at all.
yeah. So to start things off, on June 16th, I think the original announcement was on June 14th actually, but then they still had a couple of videos that they're going to publish. So then the official letter came out on June
Mhm.
16th, where Travis Gafford, the head of the esports media at Yahoo Esports, just announced that they were going to no longer upload any more content to the Yahoo Esports website. And information got out that AOL and Verizon bought Yahoo. So now they're merging into this company called Oath or something, and they wanted to focus a lot on Yahoo Sports as opposed to the esports division. They covered a lot of major titles from League to every major esport that you could think of: CS:GO, HOTS, Dota. They even covered smaller games like PUBG and Rocket League, but that's all gone now. And this involved laying off over 20 people with names that we're familiar with, like Travis Gafford, Kelsey Moser, a lot of those big name Yahoo people that you'll see during interviews or during the talk show, they all lost their jobs basically.
Mhm.
So
And I mean, the biggest part of Yahoo Esports was the League of Legends scene, obviously. And I think scattered throughout, you had the CS:GO and you had the Melee. The smaller titles weren't as big. They had some videos on it, but obviously they were way less popular than the League of Legends as well. So, I mean, the biggest names you will know is from League. So.
and there's a big problem too when you just look at the videos, the recent videos that Yahoo Esports was putting out, whether it was League or Smash or whatever, they had comparable view counts. And when you're comparing a game of the scale of League of Legends to something as small as Smash, I mean, it's a pretty big scene, but it's not nearly as big as League. And they have comparable view counts. There's a major problem there. So, but we're gonna get a little more into that now. So, first, I wanted to talk about some of the more popular league channels on YouTube. And we're talking specifically about YouTube as a platform because that's where Yahoo Esports upload a lot of their content. Of course, they uploaded everything to their own Yahoo Esports website, but they also re-uploaded everything onto Yahoo on the same day, if not a later date. The biggest League of Legends channel that I found was the League of Legends channel that Riot creates, where they put all the champion spotlights on. They put those pocket pick videos of like double lifts, pocket pick as Lucian, Sneakies as Jin, Dardox as Lee Sin. Those videos. They
Mhm.
also have some documentaries by Riot about League of Legends, and then just major game updates in general. That has 8.1 million subscribers, but that number is very skewed because when you subscribe and you link it to your League account, you get a free Alistar skin. So I mean that number is very inflated compared to what we see in the rest of the spectrum, which is closer to the 1 to 2 million subscriber count. So right under the main League of Legends YouTube account is LOL Esports with 2.3 million subscribers, which makes sense. They're streaming a lot of the LCS games on YouTube Gaming alongside Twitch, and they put a lot of the more popular content that you see on there with the more familiar faces like Jack, Kobe, Riv, Freak, all of them. You see series like This or That, The Penta, their podcast, The Dive, things like that, and of course LCS games and highlights. Followed by that is this dude named Brofesco, who is like a super clickbaity type YouTuber that has all these titles in all caps, and he says all these things that are trying to get people's attention, talking about these broken mechanics or all these crazy things they can do in the game. He's actually got 1.6 million subscribers, which is more than, to my surprise, I'm a cutie pie, which a lot of his videos are more of a montage highlight style, but they poke fun at the creator himself on PewDiePie, make him look kind of dumb, but it's really entertaining to watch. He's at 1.3 million. So those are kind of like the top channels, and they're floating around a 1 to 2 million outside of the main league um, account. But a lot of the content creators that are talking more along the lines of what Yahoo Esports did, where it's like interviews and they talk to pro players, or they do an analysis, or they maybe talk predictions, things like that. They're much smaller. But when you look at the subscriber counts and the size of the channels, there's a huge discrepancy in the reach that they have versus the subscribers, because they actually are all in the same range. So now we're gonna hop into specific League of Legends talk shows that that we wanted to compare to Yahoo Esports, but specifically we're gonna start talking about Late Night League. If you don't know, Late Night League was an 11-episode talk show series hosted by Yahoo Esports by Mark Zimmerman and Travis Gafford around the time of the inception of Yahoo Esports. We're talking about that show specifically because that was kind of what got Yahoo Esports going off the ground. That was like one of the first things that they came out with, and it failed. It just died after 11 weeks, and they had nothing. They have very inconsistent views, and then a lot of the content that they were rolling out afterwards didn't really hit the ground running either. So we're gonna compare their first major attempt at creating esports content to some of the other similar types of esports content that we've seen from other people. So the first one that Dan and I are going to talk about is Beyond the Rift by I'm a Cutie Pie and Scara. This is a ongoing series that has been temporarily put on hold because I'm a Cutie Pie and Scara are playing for Delta Fox, therefore they don't have time to run the show. But just some numbers to give you an idea of Beyond the Rift and what they do. They have around 38,000 subscribers on the Beyond Gaming YouTube channel. They have about 45 episodes already released, and the average view count for each of them is around 120,000 views. Total, they have about a little over 5 million views, but they primarily focus on entertainment. They bring in pros, they talk about silly stuff, look at the pros' perspectives on the meta sometimes, they do a little bit of analysis on games or teams, but a lot of it is very much entertainment focused. Do you want to hop in, Dan, and talk a little bit more about your impression of Beyond the Rift?
You know, I have watched every single episode of Beyond the Rift. I really think it's a very entertaining show, right? I think the biggest thing that a lot of viewers like to watch is the fact that they have those pros that do go onto the show, and they have someone like Golden Glue go onto the show. A lot of people are interested in, kind of the back history, why his thoughts pretty much on the game and the kind of league drama and why certain things happen to him. People may tune in just because they want to know, hey, what's going on with this guy? Why has he failed so much in his career, right?
He's been in pro league for so long. He went to Korean boot camp. He's been on a team that's kind of failing now. It's a very polarizing. His career is very up and down.
Yeah. So I feel like that's one. Plus, you have the huge name of I'm a Cutie Pie and Scara, who one of some of the biggest League of Legends streamers, oldest league players. So you have that popularity, and I think it's just his personality itself draws in a lot of different people. It's kind of a laid back attitude where it's like he's a very trolly kind of guy. He likes to have fun. When he does scream, it's hilarious. Scar!
And then just seeing I'm a Cutie Pie interact with these pros, I think that in itself is a very appealing reason to watch a show in general. Like they brought on Double Lift. I think that was one of their most viewed shows and viewed episodes because it's like you get to watch I'm a Cutie Pie, who claims to be the best ADC in North America, versus Double Lift, who's actually performing at an LCS level, at the highest LCS level. How they interact with each other and they take jabs at each other. I think in the episode they actually made each other compliment one another. So I thought that was
at the end of it,
pretty fun to watch. Yeah.
So overall, I think it's just a very entertaining show for a lot of people to watch. It's not too long. It's a very solid baseline, kind of just pure entertainment sake. You get a little bit of here or there, kind of, analysis, but it's not really too serious into it, right? So it's more lighthearted. fun kind of show. So
Yeah. So now, moving on to a different type of show, we're going to talk a little bit about Summoning Insight, which is a show that is technically ongoing because they still have episodes every now and then. They, as in Thorin and Monte Cristo. They don't put as many episodes out as often as they used to because Thorin is very heavily invested in CSGO now, and Monte Cristo is very heavily invested in Overwatch. But they both were pretty invested in League back then, which is where a lot of the popularity came from. Now, to put things in perspective, I said that Beyond Gaming has roughly 38,000 subscribers and cumulative views of about 5.4 million. Now, Summoning Insight only has 14,000 more subscribers, so they're sitting a little over 52. But their cumulative views are almost double Beyond the Rifts at 9 million. Now, I do want to say that their show's been going a lot longer.
they've had a lot more as well.
Yeah, and they have a lot more episodes, but it was harder to get an average because a lot of the shows that are mixed in include CSGO shows and Overwatch shows, as well as a show called Inside on Esports, which is a broader show. It's a more general, but Summoning Insight is the league specific talk show. Now, this show is very different from what we talked about in Beyond the Rift, where Thorin and Monte Cristo are very critical about the things that they talk about. They have a wide fact pool that they generally make their claims off of, and because of that, because they've been so invested in the esports scene for, I think Thorin says he's been around for at least 14 years now. Monte Cristo's been around since the inception of League of Legends. If my memory serves, I'm pretty sure that's correct. They have very strong opinions about what goes on in the League of Legends scene, or like when they talk about players and teams' performance and things like that. So because of that, they have very long form discussions on topics. Their shows are also a lot longer than Beyond the Rifts. Beyond the Rifts show averages between an hour and a half, whereas Somebody Insight I've seen, I think it's like anywhere between 2 and 4 hours. Honestly.
Two to if you have that huge world's prediction bonanza where they bring in like 6 different people onto one show, it's 5 hours long. So
yeah, it gets really long, but they get to have these long form discussions on different topics, and they are very, very adamant about their opinions on certain things. Some of the opinions are more popular than others, but it also creates this really interesting atmosphere where, some of the I think, Dan, you can talk a little more about this, but Thorin and Monte Cristo will sometimes create controversy by their opinions. You want to go a little more in depth?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing about Doran and Monty is the controversy that they bring upon. They talk about so many different things. It's somewhat, I wouldn't say it's unfiltered, but it's definitely very like, they kind of say what they think. Thorin has been doing this a long time, so his questioning and his thought behind what he's going to do with this show and the way he can kind of improvise on the spot, and some of his random little stories that he has all kind of introduce this Summoning Insight. And I think the biggest difference, he was one of the first to do something like this, right? It's something like a very the talk show, kind of get the full analysis. I think it's very different, and their personalities kind of mesh well together, right? Monte Cristo is very analytical. He is like very intelligent in the way he speaks. He kind of watches what he says as well. And then Thorin's kind of more brash, kind of, just gung ho go. But he's also very intelligent in his questioning, right? So he can bring out the best of Monte Cristo's analysis, pretty much. And then obviously you have a crap ton of just pros, coaches, league team owners, league related people, very big popular names in the scene to actually come on and kind of discuss the whole their analysis and their thoughts on how their views are. And I think, in my opinion, the reason why I was so interested in Summoning Insight was because of Doran and Monty. The pros were a huge plus. Those were a lot more interesting as well. But Monte Cristo's analysis in general, you don't have too many of those types of people who create their own content. You have very few people who are as intelligent as like or who knows as much as Monty used to because he watched every single scene. So he had the whole kind of worldwide view of League of Legends. Obviously, he was more so, connected to the league scene in Korea, and obviously he had a little bit more bias towards Korean esports or Korean League of Legends. But at the same time, pretty much he's always right about Korea, is because Korea still continues to be the best. But yeah, overall, I just think the Thor and Monty kind of their dynamic together just worked very well, and they were one of the first people to actually come up with some type of this type of idea. So, plus the controversy whenever they say something, people literally. He even says this in his show. People literally watch the entire show just to clip a section of him and Monty potentially saying something incorrect, just to watch this entire show, go back to this show and just say, "Hi, you guys were wrong." So they had both haters, like they were opposite spectrums. You either had people who really loved them, or you had people who really hated them. But that's what made it so great. So.
Yeah. It's kind of like that famous Jack Sparrow line from Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, you love me or hate me, but you have heard of me, or something like that. You know what I'm talking about?
Okay. Yeah.
Where he's like, you all hate me, but you have heard of me. So
Right. Yeah.
at least people know who they are because they hate them. You got to know who they are to hate them.
Yeah, definitely.
But then from that, there has been a new, more analytical talk show specific to the NALCS, created by Mark Zimmerman and Skara. Mark Zimmerman, I mentioned, was previously on Late Night League with Yahoo Esports before he left, and Skara is also the other guy that runs Beyond the Rift. They used to call it Prime League Time, I think, but now it's the greatest
Post League Time
talk show. Oh,
Post League Time.
There it is. Yeah. And now it's the greatest league talk show, where after every Saturday and Sunday of NALCS, Mark Z and Skara sit on a couch, they talk into a camera, and they just talk about everything you think about what's going on in LCS. They go pretty deep into things. Shows usually last about an hour and a half to 2.5 hours. They're pretty new, so their subscriber count is pretty low, only sitting at about 6.7 thousand subscribers. And their cumulative views on their videos is almost 200,000, not quite there yet. But
they did start off, because they didn't have their own YouTube channel, they started off on Skara's channel. So a lot of the views that they had for last season is on Skara's channel. So like they ported them into this new YouTube channel, but obviously nobody's gonna rewatch the same video. So I believe those had about 30K views or something around that. So.
But so we've kind of been talking a little bit about how Beyond the Rift is very entertainment focused, and I'm a Cutie Pie is a really big reason why that's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
We talked in some of the inside about how Monte Cristo and Thorn's very, very adamant feelings about their opinions is also where a lot of the entertainment value comes from. So for Greatest League Talk Show, what's really interesting is that Mark Zimmerman, former head coach of Team Liquid, and Skara, who is just known in the community for having once had a very analytical streak, he still does,
Mm-hmm.
and he does a lot of stuff. Like, he's known for his patch previews. He talks a lot about what he does in game and explains to viewers what he's doing and why he does them, and that's kind of how he got his reputation. And because they are very well respected in the league community as people who understand the game very well and have brains, to the point where they are seen pretty often on Riot's breakdown desk, where they do an analysis of games and stuff. They are known for how well they understand the game, and that's their strength in the show. And we're talking a little bit about the strengths of each show, and that's going to play into why we think, or why we think Late Night League was a failure, and then how that eventually led to Yahoo Esports failing. So here's some really interesting numbers now. For Late Night League, the YouTube channel, I don't know how many subscribers it had at the time of its inception, But Yahoo Esports YouTube channel now has about 50,000 subscribers, on par with Summoning Insight by Doran and Monty, and just a little over Beyond the Rift. But their cumulative views for the 11 episodes that they had only sat a little over 100,000 views, but they were also very inconsistent. They had I think the lowest viewed episode was only had 5,000 views, and the highest had like 24,000. And the show was very short as well. It was only 30 minutes long, as opposed to these other shows that we've been talking about that were like hours long.
Hello.
And they do some updates on league stuff, and then they have a couple pros come in and talk about stuff. But the biggest problem is that they don't have any major strength to play off of. The show was run by Mark Z and Travis Gafford, but a lot of Travis's career success has become from the launch of Double Lift eventually into the pro scene, and then all of his interviews with pro players. But without the pro players, there are no interviews, and then Travis doesn't have as much value as a journalist. And then Mark Z eventually left, but at the time he wasn't as popular because he wasn't really on a Riot analyst desk yet, and he had just left Team Liquid, and people were still getting to know who he was. But there was no real competitive advantage, right? Beyond the Rift has AmiCutiePie. Funny as hell, interacting with pros, says really dumb stuff, but it's really entertaining to watch. You can do it for an hour, and then you can roll with it. Summoning Insight, you have Doran and Monty with this wide fact pool, and then they have all these opinions that a ton of people want to harp them on, and they either, like Dan said, they love them or hate them. And we see it a lot based on Reddit too, and how they respond to them. Greatest League Talk Show, you have Mark Z and Scar talking very deeply about about
gameplay
of the game, about pros and about teams. They do power rankings every week. It's literally listening to smart people talk about the game the way a lot of people talk about, man, TSM sucks, they did this and that, or man, Cloud9 looks really bad, or why does Team Envy look so good now? They talk about these things that a lot of people generally don't have the knowledge to talk about. But then when you look at Late Night League, they're kind of dabbling in a little bit of everything, but they don't really have anything to play off of. They weren't playing on any of their strengths. They did have some cool guests like Meteos and Darshan, but then some of their other guests were much less interesting. Like they brought in Yuna, at the time the 80 carry sub for CLG, who no one knew about at the time. Like very few people knew about him. They brought in Crumbs, who was only known for his profit thing at Worlds, but at the same time he still wasn't really that popular of a guy. You have Pobelter, who, if you watch that episode, was this really... He was very uncomfortable with the camera. He didn't really know how to interact with Travis and Mark. And then I think the most confusing guest that I saw them bring in was David Lim, who was the Team Liquid head coach. I think he may have taken Mark Z's job. I didn't look into that. I should have. But you have these names that most people don't really know about, or they don't have huge fan bases. You don't really know too much about them. Pobelter was an exception, but he was just very uncomfortable on camera. So then you have the situation where Late Night League conceptually is a really good idea, but it wasn't actually a late night show because they aired it at 3 p.m. Central, and then it was, I don't know. It just didn't really have anything going. You got to chime in, Dan. Help me
the
out.
Biggest thing with Late Night League, I think, is the fact that they were so restricted in kind of how they can make their content, right? Yahoo Esports obviously has filters on what they can say, what they can do. It's more professionally done, right? So if you do have pros or if you do have people on there, unless you rehearse consistently, you're not going to have those pros be very comfortable with the set itself, right? All the other ones that you have right now, the Greatest League Talk Show, or even the ones that do bring on pros like Summoning Insight or Beyond the Rift, they're doing it from their house. They're doing it from over a webcam. They don't have to be in person. They don't have to do that kind of thing. So that's a huge factor that played into the fact that there's so much restriction, as well as you can't rehearse with these pros. You just happen to get them, and you're lucky to get them. And obviously they had to do sound checks and this and this and this, and probably it's like an actual set of a news show or something.
They built a set for the show, yeah.
It's some of the shitty set. Let's be real there. It was a set. There you go.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing that it was just I think it was just too new. Pros then are too uncomfortable with actually sitting on the desk for a full show, um, rather than just comfortably being at home answering some questions and talking kind of, and then also the filter behind what they can say and how they can say it.
So I agree that the filter that they have is probably a problem. You know, if you're on Yahoo Esports, there are probably certain things you can and can't say. Whereas, like, if you're sitting in front of a webcam at home with I'm a cutie pie over here and Scar over there on the screen, you could probably say whatever you want and they'll roll with it and laugh, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good point to bring up. I do think that that some of the pros are totally fine being in a set. Like Darshan, when he went into the show, he sang in a camera and that got like a ton of views and stuff. They even brought in Skara to the show. They brought Shocks in. They had these people that are already comfortable in front of a camera. So maybe it was just some of the guests, not all of them. But I think you bring up a really good point about the production quality. It was pretty professional. It was very well done. It was clean. It was neat. The transitions were good. The sound was pretty good. And then you look at these other shows that were literally like just like webcam, couch, roll. You know, it's like it makes you realize that these big successful shows, it's the content speaking for itself as opposed to the quality of the production. Even when they have production errors or they're monkeys about it, at least the content in itself is enjoyable, that people will consume it and they'll enjoy it on any medium, as opposed to Yahoo Esports, which took the kind of Riot LCS style approach where they tried to make the production quality really good to get people going. But I mean, when Riot is the sole, runner of the entire professional League of Legends scene, they have a few advantages that Yahoo Esports doesn't, right? So I think that you bring up a really good point that could have been a huge downfall, that they maybe should have invested a little less in the production, even though it was already kind of like as low and professional as you can get. And then more about the content itself.
Right. And that's I definitely agree with you there. There were a lot of comfortable people as well who actually came onto the show, were comfortable with the overall set itself. It's still less comfort for people in general, even if they can kind of play it off as like, yeah, we're really good on camera, but being at home at your computer, kind of talking into a webcam is so much more comfortable and so much less stress, so much less like formalities basically behind everything. So that's where I can see like Late Night League was a little off. So
now moving on to how Yahoo decided to try to like change that. You saw after Late Night League, Yahoo Esports tried to bring on a couple of different other types of talk shows, other segments. They would do a lot more interviews with pros. But then when you look, I found something really interesting. When you look at the top 11 videos, and I'll explain why I chose 11 in a bit, but when you look at the top 11 videos on the Yahoo Esports channel, 5 of them feature double lift in the name of the video or the thumbnail. The reason why I said 11 though is because the number 1 video is just some Terry Crews mock audition for an Overwatch voiceover or something,
which everybody has been waiting for forever.
I mean, yeah, but like that's not actual, like that's not along the lines of the esports content that
definitely
Yahoo Esports was like aiming for. But like, if 5 of your top videos include double lifting them to get like 200,000 or 300,000 views, obviously Travis has tried taking advantage of his network. Makes total sense. I know that I think the 3rd or 4th most viewed video on that channel to date was one by Pokemon, that really popular Diamond female streamer that's been getting a lot of attention in recently on YouTube and on Twitch and stuff. But like, and then I think the 3rd most watched video was fucking Lacrit from Albus Nox Luna quoting "I'm a cutie pie." And that's like the 3rd more popular video. Like, there's something wrong. I mean, I don't know. And then you're looking at some of the more recent videos, just like by date. Some of the league videos only have like maybe 900 views, 700 views, 1,200 views. There's something going on, and I really think that it goes back to this competitive advantage that they have when they want to do interviews and interactions with pro players. LCS and Riot Games is already doing that with LO Esports, and then if you want to see some like funny interactions with pros, watch Beyond the Rift. I mean, they stopped recently, but you can still get that. When you look at some of the more analytical segments, if you really want someone smart, you're gonna go to like people will go to Thor and Monte Cristo if they want to hear something really polarizing, or if they want to hear like a really strong opinion about something backed up with like tons of facts. If you want NALCS specific, which a lot of the consumers that we're talking about in the West are, it'll be Mark Z Scara with Greatest League Talk Show, something that they said that they agree with, or something that shows up on Reddit, right? I really don't feel like Yahoo Esports had any strengths to play off of. They didn't really have anything that they said, this is something that we can really take advantage of, that we're really good at. I mean, roll with it. I feel like Scara, Amikudi Thorin, all of them that we've been talking about, they've been really good at identifying their strengths and at rolling with them. But I don't think Yahoo Esports ever found that groove. What do you think, Dan?
Just to add something else, the other talk show that they kind of added was the League Weekly, kind of like a round table kind of circle of what was it? Mark Zimmerman, Travis Gafford, Kelsey Moser, and Emily Rand. Good set of people, but very boring analysis. There wasn't much. Like, it is very good analysis, but I think that there was something missing, and I feel like it was because of the fact, I'm going to bring this back up, the Yahoo Esports kind of restrictions on what they can do and the professionalism, and they have to act in a certain way because it's Yahoo Esports, right? They want to present themselves in a way that's very professional, and I feel like that is what holds some people back, where if you can kind of let them unchain a little bit, you can actually show their personality. And that's the biggest thing. Mark Zimmerman has a huge personality. He's very out. I feel like he's pretty outspoken in a lot of different things. He is very strong in what his analysis is, and then you have Kelsey Moser, who's more so of that like pure brain and analysis kind of person, right? She you can kind of play off of that. Emily Rand, also a very intelligent. Overall, I think now she's doing NA primarily, and then Travis Gafford's kind of just there to host it.
So it almost sounds like you're talking about like the Yahoo Esports crew had a lot of brains and they knew what they were talking about, but
right.
It was just boring to watch because there is no entertainment value.
They couldn't show their personality as much as they could if it was not in Yahoo Esports.
Right.
So right now, also another thing I probably think is because League has a lot of young audience, right? It's a pretty young audience. Now, these types of things that Yahoo Esports may bring up, things like the LCS and how, like, kind of the business side of the LCS, franchising, all of this stuff. Yeah, there are a lot of people who have grown up with League and are in their mid-20s, but at the same time, they're also very young audience as well. And I don't feel like a lot of the young audience really cares too much for all of that, like the business side of things, right? That's why they need, at least the younger audience needs entertainment. They need something loud, something out there, something that can draw their attention rather than just people talking kind of about this business side of everything and how everything may turn out in the future and all of that. That is one thing that I think Yahoo Esports didn't target the correct audience as well.
So then you talked a lot about attention, and now when you think about League of Legends, LOL Esports gets a lot of attention. They draw a lot of views, and they put spotlights and they give more attention to specific players over others. How much of Yahoo Esports' failure do you think is attributed to the fact that none of the major names or talent that was working with them was like fostered by Riot or promoted by Riot. And what I mean by that is you have Scar and AmaQDPie, who were former LCS pros.
Mhm.
You have Mark Z, who was once involved with LCS and now is on the analyst desk, where he's literally seen every week. You have Thorin, who is just a huge voice and is associated with Monte Cristo, who was known as the Korean League expert, casted Worlds a couple times, and is well known because of his promotion through Riot there.
Mhm.
How much do you think, what kind of influence do you think that has had on why Yahoo Esports didn't succeed? Because do you think that because Riot didn't because they have no one on the team that was actually directly working with Riot or had any camera time on any LCS1 or something, that this was going to eventually happen? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean that's a huge factor. You have Kelsey, you have Emily, you have other people who haven't really been seen as well.
Yeah, none of them are ever seen on stream. You don't hear their names a lot. They're not
Right.
who you think of when you think about League of Legends. Really.
Oh, definitely. Kelsey and Emily are more so. They write a lot of great articles, but you don't really see them as an entertainer, as a person who they can be brought on for some analysis sake, but they're never the main front runner. Travis has never been a huge personality without the pros themselves. The interviews that he does depends on the pros that they have. Mark Z is not big enough, in my opinion. Yes, he's growing right now, and he has a lot of growth in the past probably year or two. But yeah, they're huge. League Weekly, the late night league didn't bring on noteworthy pros. I think that's a huge deal. People don't care about as much about what these no name thoughts are, right? I guess you can consider them no name compared to what the pros are.
And then
right?
and you mentioned that the target audience of a lot of this league content is for kids in their
Mhm.
teens to early mid-20s. These guys are really young, and Riot, they don't necessarily have a monopoly on the entertainment part of league. At least maybe they have one on the competitive part. I mean, I mentioned that guy before, Bro Fesco, and then other YouTubers that do a lot of clickbaity type, just purely entertainment style videos. They're not doing very analytical stuff. They don't bring on pros and talk about them or with them. I mean, you'll have other channels that are just ripping stuff off of pro streams and then throwing them in a montage to roll with, right? But then when you talk about stuff featuring pros, creating stuff to talk about with League of Legends, competitive and things like that, I think Riot just has so much power in that content that people between the ages of you and I, and even younger or older than us, are very spoiled by just what the quality of what Riot offers, the access to resources that they have, because they literally can have all this power over all these pros, and those are just things that Yahoo doesn't have.
Yeah. I honestly actually don't think Riot has too much to do with any of the content specifically. It's more so the people and the pros that create those kind of more watched shows.
So it's almost advantageous to have a pro or really well named
Yes.
player or current player as a name instead of.
Yes. So if you see it, I took a look at some of the numbers right here. Late Night League Shocks, the one of the shows that they had Shocks on was one of their highest viewed, 78,000 views on that one show. Then you have other pros like Skara, who had 24,000 on theirs. You had someone like Medios, who was still not great, but it was a 12,000. Then you obviously had the lower ones, which was like Yuna, who had 8,000 views. And I mean, you had Poe Belter, who had 20,000 views. So these the pros bring something because people watch them. People care about the drama. People care about the people, the players in League. Whereas, if you think about any talk show, you care about the players and not about the people in the background, pretty much.
So then going back to the point that you made earlier about how Yahoo Esports wanted something more professional and they couldn't really, post stuff that showed a little more personality. That's kind of what you get with the more like I'm a cutie pie style of 15-minute video
Hmm.
of him like trolling, being himself, like a montage
Hmm.
style thing with like clickbaity thumbnails and head and titles and stuff. You can't really do that if you're Yahoo Esports, can you?
You know, uh, I feel like you are still able to. Just I don't know too much about the scene itself and how media really works behind the scene, but I feel like if you lay off on more so of the restrictions, um, let them have somewhat of their own fun, right? If Yahoo Esports was to be able to bring on something like a Beyond the Rift kind of style, where they do have top pros or top analysts or anything like that who can kind of have a fun and enjoyable time, almost like they look like they're having fun rather than just trying to analyze everything and try to predict the future and all of this stuff. I feel like Yahoo Esports could have done something like that. And then obviously I feel like Yahoo Esports, because of their production, could not get as many pros to commit the time that was needed to. I feel like they had to do some type of rehearsal. There must have been some type of rehearsal with Yahoo Esports. So there are certain pros who are able to maybe sit in on like a sound check or this or that, but not a lot, right? If they brought in Double Lift, that would have been a huge show as well. And I feel like in order for them, they didn't start off well. Let's just talk about that. I feel like they didn't start off well. You need to brand yourself and do as much publicity as possible. So your first couple of shows can be to bring on the big name pros and the big name people so you can gain some traction. And once you gain that traction, what keeps you there is the just the personalities of each host or hostess or whoever it is. So I feel like with the way they did it, probably wasn't. Maybe needed something more of a kick. Um,
So then let's say that in an imaginary scenario, the Late Night League started as Mark Z, Travis, and Double Lift. 3 hosts.
mhm.
And they're all running the show. What do you imagine would have happened if that was how they rolled with every show? We're just talking about an imaginary scenario here where Double Lift is one of the feature names on there that is there for like every show.
All right. The first couple of shows would be very good. The first couple of shows would be very good. Then it depends on how they interact. In my opinion, Travis is kind of boring. He doesn't. It doesn't seem like he has much of a huge personality himself. It's more so kind of let's. It doesn't look like he's always enjoying himself as much, in my opinion. Right. I feel like you need somebody more dynamic hosting a show. So if you
Like Thorin or I'm a cutie pie.
oh
Right?
yeah, you need a like it doesn't matter. I feel like yeah, one of the biggest things is a host too and their personality. So if you have Double Lift there, and if you can continue to have him as a big personality, as in not just like him in the scene personality, his own personality wise, continue to say certain controversial things and kind of do that old style Double Lift where he does do some of that trash talking kind of, and then continue that for a good chunk of the show, like good chunk of shows, because Late Night League, yes, they had some popular names in the beginning, but it wasn't consistent, right? They didn't have consistent people coming in. When they bring in a Yuna and they bring in nothing and nobody, and then all of a sudden people start caring less because it wasn't as interesting, and then they forget about it. So yeah, continuously having these pros, and once you gain that traction after a good period of time, then I think they just needed to have a niche too, like something that makes them interesting. The personalities just didn't mesh well. Probably, maybe that's why. That's why I didn't enjoy it, because it was more. It just looked too professional, in my opinion. It just looked too professionally done, and it wasn't very entertaining because of a good portion because of that too.
So then when you bring it back to why do we think they failed? You talked a lot about their professionalism. You talked a lot about the attention that you want to hold on to with these young, fickle league fans.
Mm-hmm.
And then something I want to point out is that in almost every department of their content, there's someone else out there that's doing it better than them, and they weren't like the best at any one particular thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's like I've been emphasizing that a lot. I really think that you have to identify your strength and roll with it.
Mm-hmm.
And Travis's greatest strength was talking to other pros, but it didn't even seem like they could take advantage of that to continue keeping Yahoo Esports alive. And then like that's only with League of Legends, right? No, I don't think a lot of people know who Travis Gafford is in the freaking Overwatch scene or the CS:GO scene.
Mm-hmm.
These aren't groups of people that are familiar with this kind of guy.
Oh yeah.
So you think about the interviews. They were okay. Sometimes they had this chick named Avali May. I mean, she was a pretty nice girl, but a lot of people watched the interviews for League because Travis was like kind of fun to talk to when he was talking to a League pro, but then no one really knows who it is. Avali, I said.
Avali May.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry if you ever watched this, I messed up your name, but she didn't have the same appeal that a lot of people would watch Travis's interviews for.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that people didn't know her, that personality that you were talking about. I feel like if she spent a little more time in
developing.
Yeah, but I mean that's also really hard to say, right? You can't just blame her for not developing.
Oh yeah,
this is probably her way of doing that with her career.
Oh yeah.
And you think about I think one thing that was also really annoying is that when you clicked on a Yahoo Esports type interview or post on Reddit, a lot of times it will link to the Yahoo Esports website, and most people don't want to watch that on the Yahoo Esports website because they have their own media player, and it's not on YouTube. Generally, it's not mobile friendly. It takes a little longer to load. People just want to watch stuff on YouTube. Even now, like when you have a Twitch clip, there's always almost always a YouTube link to
right?
They have the exact same clip because people just prefer YouTube. It's their main platform to consume videos, media, things like that. Written publications. You talked a lot about Emily Rand, and then there are also other authors that will publish work on Yahoo Esports. But then Slingshot Esports, they're really good at publishing very, very well-known articles with big names. I mean, they've done how many on Faker, and those have gotten, I'm sure, tons of attention. And they interview a lot of pros there too. Even ESPN, Jacob Wolf with his sources, blah, 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 blah about a player moving or some finance thing. I hate that guy, but he's so popular because I'm sure there are a lot of people that hate him, but there are a lot of people that like him and they want to know when his sources tell him something that's really interesting. They just do it better than Yahoo Esports. Yahoo Esports didn't really offer anything in the publications department.
Right. Everyone had their own specific style and specific thing. Travis initially started off with interviews, right? He was good at the interviews, and he was good at pulling out the personality of the professional player. Like he had the interviews where he's like the most popular ones with Doublelift, where he can actually start talking about kind of Doublelift's life, right? Doublelift's personal life, not even just like, anything super secret or anything, but more so, what is he doing, or what kind of vacations is he taking, or kind of, that was his niche. But then all of a sudden he goes into this Yahoo Esports world, and he doesn't do that anymore, obviously, with the interviews. But they didn't play to the strength of the host, I think.
And then
right?
What's also really interesting is that the Score Esports and Blitz Esports have been emerging in the esports scene lately. And Blitz specifically they're really good at their simple setup, dark lit room with a really good microphone. So then the pros are just talking almost the entire time, if not the entire time. And that's like, I mean, you talked a lot about how the professional setup of a set and looking like really legit and stuff was kind of boring. But then when you have these Blitz esports interviews where like a pro is just talking about very, very specific things, and it's just their voice, but it's a very clear sound of their voice. That's a different type of professional almost. That's like that's really appealing. It's really appealing, and if they're doing that better than an interview vet, Travis Gafford, the esports, interviewer himself, then there's something wrong, right?
Right. Definitely. Yeah, they're two different. Yes, Blitz Esports came up, and the Score Esports. The Score Esports started moving away from kind of more serious topics, and I feel like, yeah, they started
fun stuff now.
Fun clickbaity kind of titles where they can. Like I heard, like they're doing the top 5 most attractive professional league players, or this, and like the clickbaity kind of titles who draw.
So they're kind of moving away from the professional interview,
right? Which is good. Like that's great for them. They're doing that, and it's successful and it's working for them. But
there's also a thing where we were talking about Avali May and how she was kind of developing a career. There's that chick that was doing a lot of Score Esports interviews, Lisa Doan or something. I think something that she had that was really unique was that her interviews are pretty entertaining to watch because she was a lot more vibrant in the discussion and she had a lot more energy. And I don't think that Avali is bad at that, but she was kind of developing that.
Oh yeah, she's still very new.
She was very new, and it's hard to blame her for that. But I think it's easier to say that Yahoo Esports should have had, while they're developing talent, to already have established talent, kind of someone like Lisa Doan, who is, I think that's her name, where she can draw attention and get the audience excited about the way she interacts with a pro player.
Yeah, so that's why
Scar was also part of the Score Esports for a while, but I mean that's a totally different thing.
Yeah, so I mean a lot of different things that came into play, and they just didn't take advantage of their personalities, or they didn't develop a style for themselves. They might have taken on a little bit too much probably before they developed one specific style and started branching off of that. Whereas, as you can tell, like you said, Blitz Esports came in straight with that one specific style where it's one quiet room, questions, and like very serious toned, like closed room, one-on-one interview.
It was a very intimate feeling, like you're watching the video. It's almost like you're talking to that pro. You can hear
exactly
very crisp and sound. And another thing is that I think you bring up a really, really good point. Yahoo Esports was like jumping into a bunch of different things and trying out all the different content, which honestly I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because it means that they can test the water and see what works and what doesn't. But something that the Blitz Esports did that was really, really good, that I'm a huge fan of personally as a journalist myself, is that, and a content creator, is that they found a formula that works really, really well for them and gave them identity. And they just roll with that every time. They replicate that for almost every video, if not every video. And they know that that's what's worked for them. People really like it, and they continue with it.
Yeah.
So now they're going to branch off to do other stuff. Like I know that one of the most recent videos was, why do we see Galio picked all the time? That's something that you haven't seen as much. Previously, we saw videos like, oh, what's the MSI format look like? What is franchising? Just answering all these like questions that like those LCS league pro overlords up there are talking about, that people really have as much of an understanding of, that they kind of shine a light on. So they kind of like, that's how they're beginning to dabble. Whereas Yahoo Esports did it kind of the opposite, where they kind of like tried everything first and then see what worked and what didn't. But then maybe they're spread too thin.
Definitely spread too thin. So I guess a question for you is, what do you think? How do you think someone who's new, or some new publication or some new place, could succeed now? Starting full fresh, if they were to come in now, how do you think they would be able to grow and be successful?
If there's something I learned from the other talk shows that we've analyzed, is that let the content speak for itself. And as a journalist myself, and as someone who's spoken to other successful journalists that are in the field that have given me advice personally, letting your content speak for itself is huge. Because you're focusing on one thing, which is creating that piece, creating that video, creating that article. And and it's really easy to fall into the trap of thinking that you can do a ton of things at once, where you're multitasking and you're doing all these different things. in general. That's not just for like how Yahoo Esports approach their content, but just in general, people think they overestimate their ability to multitask. And I think that for anyone that's going into something or in content creation in general, just kind of do what Yahoo Esports did initially, which is keep pumping out stuff so you have stuff to work with. But then try to narrow your focus so you can get really good at something and focus on that. Because then when you can identify what you're good at, what you're not good at, it's easier to identify what your competitive advantage is and why people will watch you. There is a really interesting team activity that I once did with some friends on a different team, where we had a very long straw, and the idea is that everyone on the team could only use one finger, and we all had to lift it up. But we all had to lift it up at the same rate without any of our fingers leaving the straw. But the exception to that activity was that each member of the activity would only have 30 seconds to speak, and only one person could speak at a time, and you had to go in a circle, and you had a time limit. But what you're supposed to learn from that activity is that everyone's going to have a different idea of how to create something. Everyone's going to have a different idea of how to approach a problem. But something that a lot of people forget when working in a team setting is that even if you think that you have a better solution than your teammate, it's worthwhile considering how to improve your teammate's idea instead of telling them to scrap it completely and starting anew. Because when you invest resources into one specific idea and then try to draw out its strengths and then like work on its weaknesses and address them, you commit to one thing and you roll with it, as opposed to just like trying something, oh, it failed, oh, I don't think it's gonna work, and then like being really skeptical about it for everything and then never coming up with a solution. So kind of to answer your question and bring it all back together, I really think that it's worthwhile to commit to a narrower vision. Try to invest all that you can into it to identify what's good and what's not, and adjust those things as you go, as opposed to spreading yourself too thin the way I believe Yahoo Esports did. I do think that it was too soon to cut it off completely, because I do think that esports is still continuing to grow, and to me it was pretty shocking that Yahoo Esports actually cut it out. But at the rate that they were going and with the results that they were putting out, maybe if they weren't making too many changes, failure was inevitable.
Yeah. And then also, I think to add on to that, they need a very dynamic host or a dynamic person.
Like a face to Yahoo Esports. Yeah.
Yes. Travis Gafford is not the face. He can be the background and he can do the things. Maybe he's very intelligent in regards to how everything should work. But he is not the dynamic host and the dynamic face to kind of create entertaining shows, or so all that added up together. Sad that Yahoo Esports left, because they did create some very interesting content, but they just picked too many things that other people did better, and they were more so a jack of all trades, but a master of absolutely nothing. If you're a master of nothing, most people don't watch you.
Yep.
That's why you see, obviously, the most popular streamers are the ones who are pretty good at League, or professionals, or, they watch them because they're good and they want to learn, or they want to see. You have to have a very dynamic personality, or specific talent that you have. So, yeah, overall, everything added up.
Yeah. But with that being said, I think that kind of wraps up our discussion on the whole Yahoo Esports fiasco, and we'll probably see what happens in the future as that company Oath, moves forward. They may rejoin the esports scene at some point. They may not. I do want to sympathize really quickly or rather empathize with those that have just randomly been laid off because they were pursuing their dreams in a career in esports, but it didn't work out. But I do hope that the entire Yahoo Esports staff continue to work in esports, because I think it's a phenomenal industry to work in, and I really do think that there should be more content creators as talented as what they were doing. Probably not to the extent that most people would agree with in terms of how hardworking they were, but hopefully we'll see more of those names in the future.
I do think that obviously, like everyone else says, they have the connections and they have the people. That's really all you need. Like you have, if as long as you have somewhat of the talent to do whatever you do, you just need the connections, and they have their ins already. So,
Yeah.
in my opinion, they'll most likely be perfectly fine. So I just watched a little bit of what was it? It's Travis's new League Weekly Recoded on his State of the League show, and Kelsey already found a position at ESPN. I think Emily found some other positions at two different publishing places. Mark Z obviously does his own thing already, so everyone is kind of rolling out, and they're doing. And then obviously the back production side will probably be perfectly fine as well, because did that for for so long here. So yeah.
But that's gonna wrap it up for our chat this week. Yeah, if you guys have any feedback, if we ever upload this, just drop it at the bottom.
Thank you for watching. Yeah,
Thanks a
like,
lot for watching.
subscribe, comment. Let us know how everything went. If anything we can improve on. Sorry about the shitty quality of that. the graphics, the overlay, DJ talks. That was a very last minute thing. Let us know.
But if there's anything that we've learned, production doesn't matter. We're hoping the content speaks for itself. But yeah, that's gonna wrap it up. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
See you guys next time.